Have you ever felt completely overwhelmed by the choices you have to make in life? It's like the more freedom we get, the more pressure we feel to take responsibility for our decisions, and it can be super confusing. Today, we're going to dive into the mind of one of the most influential philosophers of the modern era, Friedrich Nietzsche, and explore one of the most fundamental paradoxes of human existence, the tension between freedom and responsibility. In this video, we'll be examining how Nietzsche's philosophy sheds light on this paradox and what implications it has for our daily lives. Nietzsche's ideas on freedom and responsibility are complex and multifaceted, but ultimately, they boil down to one central question. Are we truly free to make our own choices, or are we bound by external forces beyond our control? We'll be exploring this question through Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, his idea of the Ubermensch, and his critique of traditional morality. Throughout this video, we'll be looking at real-life examples, historical case studies, and philosophical debates to enrich our understanding of this paradox. So, if you're ready to venture into the depths of Nietzsche's mind and uncover the intricacies of human freedom and responsibility, then let's get started. The concept of will to power is central to Nietzsche's philosophy, and it's the driving force behind human existence. In essence, it's the fundamental desire to exert one's strength, creativity, and individuality in the world. When we exercise our will to power, we feel a sense of freedom and empowerment, as if we're unleashing our true potential. But what does this mean in practice? Imagine you're an artist, and you're given the freedom to create whatever you want. You're not bound by any restrictions or expectations. You're free to express yourself however you see fit. In this scenario, you're exercising your will to power, and you're likely to feel a sense of liberation and creativity. However, as we'll see throughout this video, this sense of freedom can also lead to a sense of responsibility, and that's where things get complicated. When we're given the freedom to make our own choices, we must also take responsibility for the consequences of those choices, and that can be a heavy burden to bear. The concept of will to power is closely tied to Nietzsche's idea of the individual's struggle for self-overcoming. According to Nietzsche, we must constantly strive to overcome our own limitations, our weaknesses, and our flaws in order to become the best version of ourselves. This process of self-overcoming is what he calls the Ubermensch, or the Superman. The Ubermensch is not a being with superhuman powers, but rather someone who has reached the pinnacle of human potential. They're individuals who have taken full responsibility for their lives, their choices, and their actions. They're not bound by external forces or traditional morality. They're free to create their own values and live life on their own terms. But what does this mean for our sense of responsibility? If we're truly free to make our own choices, then we must also take full responsibility for the consequences of those choices. We can't blame external circumstances or other people for our mistakes. We must own up to them and learn from them. In historical and contemporary figures, we see examples of how this paradox plays out in real life. Take, for instance, Alexander the Great, who conquered vast territories and created one of the largest empires in history. He exercised his will to power to the fullest, but in doing so, he also took on an enormous amount of responsibility for the lives of his soldiers, his subjects, and the welfare of his empire. Or take, for example, Steve Jobs, who revolutionized the tech industry with his innovative designs and vision. He exercised his will to power by creating products that changed the world, but he also took on the responsibility of being a leader, a manager, and an entrepreneur. In both cases, we see how the exercise of will to power is accompanied by a sense of responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility can feel overwhelming. We might feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, and that's exactly what Nietzsche meant by the phrase, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati," that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendaciousness in the face of what is necessary, but love it. The burden of responsibility can lead to feelings of guilt and anxiety, which can be paralyzing. Imagine making a mistake that costs your company millions of dollars, or making a decision that hurts someone you love. The weight of that responsibility can be crushing, and it's exactly this feeling that Nietzsche is getting at when he talks about the eternal recurrence. The eternal recurrence is the idea that everything in life will recur infinitely, and that we must live our lives in such a way that we would be proud to repeat every moment, every decision, and every action for all eternity. This thought is both exhilarating and terrifying, as it puts the weight of responsibility squarely on our shoulders. But what about morality? Doesn't morality provide a set of guidelines for making decisions and taking responsibility? According to Nietzsche, traditional morality is nothing more than a slave morality, a set of rules and regulations that stifle our creativity, our individuality, and our will to power. He believed that morality should be about creating our own values, our own principles, and our own sense of right and wrong. In contrast to traditional morality, Nietzsche advocated for a master morality, where individuals take responsibility for creating their own values and living by their own principles. This doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want. Rather, it means that we must take full responsibility for our actions and their consequences. So, does true freedom exist? Is it possible to make choices without being bound by external forces or internal constraints? Philosophers have debated this question for centuries, and there's no easy answer. Some argue that our choices are determined by factors beyond our control, while others believe that we have complete free will. Nietzsche, for one, believed that our choices are influenced by our own desires, our own values, and our own sense of purpose. He believed that we're free to create our own destiny, but we must also take responsibility for the consequences of our choices. As we reflect on Nietzsche's ideas, we're left to ponder our own experiences with freedom and responsibility. Have we ever felt a sense of liberation when making a choice, only to be followed by a sense of burden and responsibility? Have we ever struggled with feelings of guilt and anxiety when making a mistake? As I reflect on my own life, I realize that freedom and responsibility are intertwined like two sides of the same coin. We can't have one without the other, and we must learn to balance them in order to live a fulfilling life. In conclusion, Nietzsche's philosophy offers a profound insight into the human condition. It shows us that freedom and responsibility are not mutually exclusive, but rather complementary aspects of human existence. By embracing our own will to power, we can take responsibility for our choices and create our own destiny. To recap, we've explored Nietzsche's concept of will to power, his idea of the Ubermensch, and his critique of traditional morality. We've seen how the exercise of will to power can lead to a sense of freedom and responsibility, and how this paradox plays out in real-life examples and historical figures. As we move forward, I encourage you to reflect on your own experiences with freedom and responsibility. How do you balance these two competing forces in your own life? Do you feel a sense of liberation when making choices, or do you feel burdened by the weight of responsibility? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our previous video on existentialism, and don't forget to subscribe for more content on philosophy, psychology, and personal growth. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.